Maya Washington's hands were shaking so hard she couldn't hold the pen. Across the courtroom, her husband Brad was laughing. Actually laughing. He leaned over to his lawyer and said loud enough for everyone to hear, "Look at her. She's going to cry. This is going to be easier than I thought." She had no lawyer, no money, no way out. But Brad Whitmore made one fatal mistake. She was wearing a navy blue dress she'd bought at Target 3 years ago, back when she still had access to her own bank account. Across the aisle, the atmosphere was completely different. Bradley Harrison Whitmore III sat like a king holding court. His charcoal gray Tom Ford suit probably cost more than Maya's car. Flanking him were 2 junior associates and his lead attorney, Charles "Chip" Pemberton IV, a man whose family had been destroying people in courtrooms since before the Civil Rights Act. Brad checked his Rolex, then leaned over to Chip. "She really showed up without a lawyer," Brad whispered, though he made no effort to keep his voice down. "I told you she was stupid." Chip chuckled, arranging his papers with manicured fingers. "We'll be done by lunch. I have a tea time at 2. Maya heard every word. She kept her eyes fixed on a scratch in the wooden table, a small imperfection in the polished surface. She focused on it like a lifeline. "Don't cry. Don't you dare cry. That's what he wants." "All rise." The bailiff's voice cut through the murmurs. Judge Patricia Morrison entered, a black woman in her 60s with silver-streaked hair and reading glasses perched on her nose. She had a reputation for fairness, which was exactly why Chip had tried 3 times to get the case reassigned. He'd failed. Small mercies. "Be seated," Judge Morrison said, settling into her chair. She opened the case file, scanning it briefly. Case number 2024-DV-4471. Whitmore versus Whitmore. Counsel, state your appearances. Chip rose smoothly, buttoning his jacket in one practiced motion. "Charles Pemberton IV, Your Honor, representing the petitioner, Mr. Bradley Whitmore." Judge Morrison's eyes moved to Maya's table. Maya stood. Her legs felt like water. "Maya Washington Whitmore, Your Honor. I'm representing myself." A ripple went through the small gallery. Maya caught the movement of reporters' pens. Brad had made sure the press was here. He wanted witnesses to her humiliation. Judge Morrison removed her glasses. "Mrs. Whitmore, this is a complex divorce proceeding involving significant assets, property division, and custody of a minor child. Are you certain you wish to proceed pro se? This court strongly advises against it." "I have no choice, Your Honor." Maya's voice came out steadier than she felt. "My husband has frozen all our joint accounts. I have no access to marital funds. I contacted 14 law firms. None would take my case on contingency." "Objection," Chip said, not even bothering to stand. "The respondent is being dramatic. Mr. Whitmore offered her a generous settlement. She refused out of greed." "Generous?" Maya turned to face Chip for the first time. "He offered me a studio apartment in Flint and $2,000 a month. We've been married for 7 years. I helped build his company from nothing." "You answered phones," Brad cut in, his voice dripping with condescension. "Let's not exaggerate your contributions, Maya." "Mr. Whitmore," Judge Morrison said sharply, "you will address the bench, not the respondent, and you will wait your turn to speak. Is that understood?" Brad held up his hands in mock surrender, that charming smile he'd perfected at prep school spreading across his face. "Of course, Your Honor. My apologies." Maya watched the smile. She used to love that smile. She used to believe it meant something. "Mrs. Whitmore," the judge continued, "do you have any witnesses, any evidence to present?" "I have documentation, Your Honor. Bank statements, emails, records of my work at Trust Vault during the startup phase." Maya touched the thin manila folder in front of her. It held everything she'd managed to save before Brad changed all the passwords. "And I'm expecting someone. An advisor. She's been delayed." Chip snorted. "An advisor, not a lawyer. Your Honor, this is clearly a delay tactic. Mrs. Whitmore has had 6 months to prepare. If she hasn't retained counsel by now, that's her own failure." "My client froze her access to funds 6 months ago," Maya said quietly. "The same week I filed for divorce." "Because you were planning to steal from the company," Brad said, unable to stop himself. "I protected our assets." "Your assets," Maya corrected. "You've made it very clear they were never ours." Judge Morrison held up a hand. "Enough. Mr. Pemberton, you may proceed with your opening statement. Mrs. Whitmore, I'll give you until noon for your advisor to arrive. If they don't, we proceed without them. Understood?" "Yes, Your Honor. Thank you." Maya sat down. Her hands were still shaking. Chip stood and walked to the center of the courtroom, positioning himself so the gallery could see his profile. He was performing, Maya realized. This wasn't a legal proceeding to him. It was theater. "Your Honor, this case is simple," Chip began, his voice carrying the practiced warmth of a man who had convinced juries to destroy innocent people. "My client, Bradley Whitmore, is a successful entrepreneur. He built Trust Vault from the ground up, creating a fintech platform that serves over 2 million users. He worked 80-hour weeks. He sacrificed his health, his time, his peace of mind to build something meaningful." Chip paused, letting that image settle. "And what did Mrs. Whitmore contribute?" He turned slightly, gesturing toward Maya without looking at her. "She answered phones. She arranged catering for investor meetings. She smiled at parties." Maya felt her jaw tighten. "Now, don't misunderstand me," Chip continued, his tone shifting to something almost sympathetic. "There's nothing wrong with being a supportive spouse. But Mrs. Whitmore is not asking for reasonable support. She's asking for half of Trust Vault, half of a company she didn't code, didn't fund, didn't conceptualize. She wants 50% because she happened to be married to a brilliant man." "I was more than a receptionist," Maya said. Judge Morrison looked at her. "Mrs. Whitmore, you'll have your chance to respond." "Let her talk," Brad called out. "This is entertaining." Chip shot Brad a warning look, but the damage was done. "Mrs. Whitmore," Judge Morrison said slowly, "would you like to respond to Mr. Pemberton's characterization?" Maya stood again. She could feel the eyes of the gallery on her, the reporters, the junior associates smirking, Brad lounging in his chair like he was watching a movie. "I wrote the original business plan," Maya said. "I worked 18-hour days during the launch, handling customer service, marketing, investor relations. I did the books for the first 2 years because we couldn't afford an accountant. When we almost went bankrupt in 2019, She stopped herself. "Not yet." "Don't reveal that yet." "You what?" Chip pounced. "You what, Mrs. Whitmore? Did you magically produce capital? Did you code the algorithm? Did you do anything other than what any secretary could have done?" "I am not a secretary." "You're right," Chip said, walking toward her table. "You were the help." The word landed like a slap. Maya stared at him. "I'm sorry," Chip said, not sounding sorry at all. "Did I say something offensive? I meant you were hired help, an employee. Your marriage was a business arrangement that is now concluded. My client is prepared to offer you a fair severance, nothing more." "Chip," Judge Morrison warned. "Withdrawn, Your Honor," Chip smiled pleasantly. "Let me rephrase. Mrs. Whitmore came into this marriage with nothing. No education beyond community college, no family money, no connections. Everything she has because my client chose to share it with her. He elevated her. And now she wants to punish him for his generosity?" "That's not true," Maya said. Isn't it? Chip pulled a document from his folder. Let's look at the prenuptial agreement you signed in 2017. Section 4, paragraph B. Please read it for the court. He slid the paper across the table. Maya looked at it, at her own signature at the bottom. She remembered signing it. 3 hours before the wedding, Brad standing over her, his voice so reasonable. It's just a formality, baby. My investors require it. You know I'll always take care of you. Read it, Chip repeated. Maya's voice was hollow. In the event of dissolution of marriage, the party of the second part waives all claims to equity in Trust Vault LLC and any derivative entities. You signed away your rights, Chip said. Voluntarily, knowingly. Is that correct? I signed it because he told me he wouldn't marry me otherwise. I signed it because I loved him. I signed it because I believed him when he said it didn't matter. But you signed it. Yes. Chip turned to the judge with a satisfied expression. Your Honor, the prenup is clear and legally binding. Mrs. Whitmore's claims to the company are void. We ask that you enforce the agreement and dismiss her counterclaims. Judge Morrison made a note. Mrs. Whitmore, do you have any evidence that the prenuptial agreement was signed under duress? Maya thought about that day. The flowers everywhere. Her mother adjusting her veil. The happiness she'd felt, despite the last-minute document. Had she been coerced? Or had she simply been young and trusting and desperately in love with a man who never loved her back? I have my testimony, Maya said. And the circumstances. He presented it 3 hours before the ceremony. I had no time to consult a lawyer. I didn't even fully read it. Did he threaten you? No. Did he physically force you to sign? No. Then you signed it voluntarily. Chip's voice was almost gentle now, the tone of a man explaining something to a slow child. You made a choice. You're simply unhappy with the consequences of that choice. Maya had no response, because technically, legally, he was right. Now, Chip continued, pivoting smoothly, let's discuss the custody arrangement. Maya's head snapped up. What about it? Mrs. Whitmore, you're asking for full custody of Genesis Whitmore, age 5. Is that correct? Yes, I'm her mother. I've been her primary caregiver since birth. Have you? Chip raised an eyebrow. Let's examine that claim. Mr. Whitmore, who hired Genesis's nanny? Brad leaned forward, playing his part perfectly. I did. Maria has been with us since Genesis was 3 months old. And who pays Maria's salary? I do, through the household account that I fund entirely. Who chose Genesis's preschool? I researched the options. Maya just agreed with my choice. And who takes Genesis to her doctor's appointments? Maria does, mostly. Maya is... Brad paused, feigning reluctance. Maya isn't always... available. Maya felt the blood drain from her face. That's a lie. I take her to every appointment. I know her pediatrician's name, her favorite foods, her fears, her dreams. You don't even know her middle name. Her middle name is Maya, Brad said smoothly. After her mother. I chose it. That's not... Maya stopped. He was right. He had suggested it. She'd been so touched at the time. Your Honor, Chip said, we have concerns about Mrs. Whitmore's fitness as a custodial parent. She has a history of emotional instability. She has been prone to accusations and paranoid behavior. She once claimed she heard voices in the baby monitor. I heard voices, Maya said, because there were voices. Brad was using the nursery to make phone calls. He didn't think I could access the cloud recordings. Cloud recordings, Chip chuckled. Your Honor, Mrs. Whitmore is now claiming she has surveillance evidence. Evidence she hasn't disclosed. Evidence that probably doesn't exist. This is exactly the kind of erratic behavior we're concerned about. It exists, Maya said. "It's on my phone. I can show you right now." Judge Morrison leaned forward. "You have evidence on your phone, Mrs. Whitmore?" "Yes. Recordings from the baby monitor. Brad discussing business matters. Private business matters in our daughter's room." Chip laughed out loud. "Your Honor, this is ridiculous. Even if such recordings exist, they'd be inadmissible. Michigan is a two-party consent state. She can't record private conversations without permission." "The monitor recorded automatically," Maya said. "I didn't set it to record. It backs up to the cloud by default. Brad knows this because his company makes the software." Brad's smile flickered, just for a second. Maya caught it. "Your Honor," Chip said quickly, "we're getting off track. The question is custody, not alleged recordings of unknown provenance. The fact remains that Mrs. Whitmore has no income, no home, no ability to support a child. Mr. Whitmore has offered her supervised visitation. That's more than generous." "Supervised?" Maya's voice rose. "I'm her mother. I've never done anything to harm her. I've never—" "You tried to access company accounts without authorization," Brad cut in. "You stole documents. You broke into my private email." "Those were our accounts, our documents, our emails. I was trying to find out why our daughter's college fund was suddenly empty." The gallery murmured. Judge Morrison banged her gavel once. "Order! Mrs. Whitmore, Mr. Whitmore, you will address the court, not each other." But Maya couldn't stop now. 7 years of swallowed words were rising in her throat like bile. He emptied her college fund to pay for a trip to Monaco with his assistant. He transferred money to offshore accounts. He's been hiding assets for years, and when I found out, he changed every password, canceled every credit card, and told everyone I was crazy. "These are serious allegations," Judge Morrison said. "They're lies," Brad said calmly. "Your Honor, my wife is unwell. I've tried to get her help. She refused. This is exactly why I'm concerned about her having unsupervised access to our daughter. She sees conspiracies everywhere. She thinks I'm out to get her. Classic paranoid ideation." Maya stared at him. He was good. He was so good at this. He sounded reasonable, concerned, like a husband worried about his mentally ill wife. "I'm not paranoid," Maya said quietly. "I'm observant. There's a difference." "Mrs. Whitmore," Judge Morrison's voice was not unkind. "I understand you're under a great deal of stress, but I need evidence, not accusations. Do you have bank statements showing these alleged transfers? Do you have documentation of the emptied college fund?" Some of it. He changed the passwords before I could print everything. But I have some. May I see it?" Maya opened her manila folder. Her hands were trembling again. She pulled out the thin stack of papers, suddenly aware of how pathetic it looked compared to Chip's overflowing briefcase. She handed the documents to the bailiff, who passed them to the judge. Judge Morrison examined them silently for a long moment. "These are account statements from 2022, the judge said finally. "Over 2 years old. They show transfers, yes, but without current records, I can't determine the final destination of these funds." "He changed the accounts," Maya said. "Closed them. Open new ones. I can't access anything current." Chip seized the moment. "Your Honor, this is exactly what we've been saying. Mrs. Whitmore has outdated documents and wild theories. She has no legal representation, no current evidence, and no credible claim to anything beyond what the prenup allows. We ask that you rule in Mr. Whitmore's favor and end this proceeding." Judge Morrison looked at Maya. There was something in her eyes. Sympathy, maybe, or recognition. "Mrs. Whitmore, is your advisor coming or not? You have 45 minutes until the deadline I set." Maya looked at the clock on the wall. 11:15 a.m. Her mother's flight had landed at 9:30. Even with traffic, she should have been here by now. Unless something went wrong. Unless she'd changed her mind. Unless Maya really was alone in this, the way she'd been alone for the past 7 years. I don't know, Your Honor. She was supposed to be here. She promised. Brad laughed. He actually laughed. Her mother was supposed to come save her, Brad said to Chip, loud enough for everyone to hear. The nurse from Detroit. What's she going to do? Take my temperature? Give me a flu shot? Chip smirked, but had the sense not to add anything. Your Honor, Brad continued, leaning forward with that reasonable, concerned expression. Can we please just end this? My wife is embarrassing herself. Her mystery advisor isn't coming because there is no advisor. There's just a desperate woman grasping at straws. I feel sorry for her, I really do. But I have a company to run. I have a daughter to protect. I can't keep indulging this fantasy. Maya felt the last of her strength draining away. She thought about Genesis, about tucking her in at night, about the way her daughter said "Mommy" in her sleep, about the drawings Genesis made, always with 3 people, Mommy, Genesis, and Grandma Lorraine. Never Daddy. Genesis never drew Daddy. She thought about her mother, about the phone call 3 months ago, when Maya had finally broken down and told her everything. The silence on the line. Then her mother's voice, quiet but steel hard. I'm coming. Don't sign anything. Don't agree to anything. Just hold on. But holding on was getting harder. Your Honor, Maya said, and she hated how small her voice sounded. Can I have until noon? Just until noon. Please. Judge Morrison studied her for a long moment. 45 minutes, Mrs. Whitmore. Then we proceed with or without your advisor. Thank you, Your Honor. Maya sat down. The chair felt like it might swallow her whole. Chip was already conferring with Brad, their voices low, but their expressions triumphant. The junior associates were packing up, confident this would be over before they needed to do any actual work. Maya stared at the clock. 11:16. 11:17. 11:18. Each minute felt like a year. And then, at 11:47, everything changed. It started with a sound. The heavy double doors at the back of the courtroom didn't just open. They swung wide with a force that made the hinges groan. Every head in the courtroom turned. Maya turned. And there, standing in the doorway, was her mother. Lorraine Eleanor Washington was 62 years old. She stood 5'5", with natural gray hair cut short and practical. She wore a simple black pantsuit, no designer labels, but pressed so crisp it could cut glass. Her face was lined with decades of hard work and harder wisdom. But it was her eyes that made people stop. Lorraine Washington had spent 40 years as an ICU nurse. She had watched billionaires beg for their lives. She had held the hands of dying men who thought their money could save them. She had seen humanity at its most desperate and its most depraved. Nothing impressed her. Nothing scared her. And right now, she was looking at Brad Whitmore like he was a stain she was about to bleach out of existence. She wasn't alone. Behind her stood a tall black woman in a burgundy suit, carrying a leather briefcase that looked like it meant business. Behind her were 2 younger attorneys, tablets ready, faces sharp. Lorraine walked down the center aisle, her sensible heels clicking against the floor with a rhythm that sounded like a countdown. Click, click, click. She didn't look at Brad. She didn't look at Chip. She walked straight to Maya's table, placed her hand on her daughter's shoulder, and squeezed once. "Sorry I'm late, baby," Lorraine said quietly. "Traffic on I-94 was worse than a code blue." Maya felt tears spring to her eyes. "Mama, don't you start crying yet," Lorraine said. "Save that for when we win." She turned to face the bench. "Your Honor," Lorraine said, her voice carrying through the courtroom without a hint of nervousness. "I apologize for the delay. My name is Lorraine Washington. I'm here as an advisor to my daughter, the respondent. And this," she gestured to the woman in burgundy, "is Patricia Coleman of Coleman and Associates, who is entering her appearance as lead counsel for Mrs. Maya Washington Whitmore." Patricia Coleman stepped forward. She was maybe 50, with close-cropped natural hair and the kind of presence that made rooms go quiet. "Patricia Coleman, Your Honor, representing the respondent. We filed our appearance electronically and have additional motions to present." Chip was on his feet, his face red. "Your Honor, this is outrageous. They can't just walk in at the last minute and—" "We're not at the last minute," Patricia said coolly. "We have 13 minutes to spare, and all our filings are in order. I have receipts, if you'd like to verify." Judge Morrison was trying not to smile. She was failing. "Ms. Coleman, your appearance is noted. Mr. Pemberton, sit down." Chip sat. Brad was staring at Lorraine. His charming smile had vanished. "Who are you?" Brad demanded. "You're supposed to be a nurse. What is this?" Lorraine turned to look at him. Just looked. The way she might look at a particularly disappointing lab result. "I am a nurse, Mr. Whitmore. 40 years in the ICU at Detroit Medical Center. You know what I learned in 40 years? Brad said nothing. "I learned that everybody's the same when they're dying," Lorraine said. "Rich, poor, black, white, they all beg the same. They all cry for their mamas the same. Money doesn't change that." She leaned closer. "I also learned patience, Mr. Whitmore. How to wait, how to watch, how to know exactly when to act." She straightened up. "You've been hurting my daughter for 7 years. You thought she had no one. You thought she came from nothing." Lorraine smiled. It was not a warm smile. "You were wrong." The silence in that courtroom was so heavy you could have heard a pin drop on carpet. Chip Pemberton recovered first. He always did. 40 years of courtroom battles had taught him how to absorb a punch and swing back twice as hard. "Your Honor, this is highly irregular." Chip's voice dripped with practiced indignation. "Ms. Coleman's firm is based in Detroit. She's not admitted to practice in this county. This is a transparent delay tactic, and frankly, it's insulting to the court's time." Patricia Coleman didn't even blink. "I filed my pro hoc vice application at 7:43 this morning, Mr. Pemberton. Judge Morrison's clerk approved it at 8:15. Would you like to see the timestamp?" She held up her phone. The screen glowed with the confirmation. Chip's jaw tightened. "Even so, introducing new counsel this late in the proceedings is perfectly legal," Patricia cut him off. "The respondent was denied access to marital funds. She couldn't retain counsel through normal channels. Under Michigan Family Code, the court is required to ensure both parties have adequate representation. Mrs. Whitmore now has representation. Unless you're arguing she shouldn't have a lawyer at all." "Of course not. I'm simply saying, you're simply stalling." Patricia walked to the defendant's table and set down her briefcase with a satisfying thunk. "Something you accused my client of doing not 10 minutes ago. Interesting how the rules change when they apply to you." Judge Morrison tapped her pen against the bench. "Mr. Pemberton, Miss Coleman's appearance is in order. We're proceeding. Do you have any substantive objections, or are we done with the theatrics?" Chip's face flushed red, but he sat down. "No further objections, Your Honor." "Good." Judge Morrison turned to the defense table. Ms. Coleman, your client has made several serious allegations this morning. Do you have evidence to support them?
We do, Your Honor.
Patricia opened her briefcase.
But first, I'd like to address the prenuptial agreement that Mr. Pemberton has been waving around like a golden ticket.
She pulled out a thick folder and approached the bench.
The respondent signed this agreement on June 15, 2017, at approximately 4:30 p.m. Her wedding ceremony was scheduled for 7 p.m. that same evening.
She was presented with a 47-page legal document and given less than 3 hours to review it. No independent counsel was present. No explanation of terms was provided. Chip stood. She signed voluntarily. She admitted as much. She signed under duress, Patricia countered. Mr. Whitmore explicitly told her he would cancel the wedding if she didn't sign. 200 guests were already seated. Her elderly grandmother had flown in from Georgia. The caterer had been paid. The photographer was setting up. Patricia turned to face Brad directly. You weaponized her love for you, Mr. Whitmore. You waited until she was emotionally committed, financially invested, and socially trapped. Then you handed her a document that would strip away her rights and told her to sign or lose everything. That's not a negotiation. That's extortion. Brad laughed. It sounded forced now. This is ridiculous. She could have said no. Could she? Patricia asked. Let's examine that. Mrs. Whitmore, can you tell the court what happened when you asked for time to read the prenup? Maya's voice was stronger now, steadied by her mother's presence. He said there wasn't time. He said his lawyers had worked on it for months, and it was standard. He said if I trusted him, I wouldn't need to read it. And when you expressed concern about the business ownership laws? He said it didn't matter because we'd be together forever. He said what's mine is yours, baby. He said the prenup was just to make his investors happy. He promised he would never enforce it. Patricia nodded. Your Honor, we have text messages from Mr. Whitmore to Mrs. Whitmore, sent the day before the wedding. Defense Exhibit A. She handed a stack of papers to the bailiff. In these messages, Mr. Whitmore writes, and I quote, "Don't worry about the prenup thing. It's just paper. You know I'd never leave you with nothing. Trust me." End quote. Brad's smile faltered. That was years ago. I was being romantic. You were being manipulative, Patricia said. You made verbal promises to induce her signature, promises you had no intention of keeping. Under contract law, that's called fraudulent inducement. It renders the prenup voidable. Objection, Chip said, rising. This is a family court, not a contract dispute. The prenup was notarized and witnessed. It's valid. The prenup was signed without independent legal review by one party, under time pressure deliberately created by the other party, based on false promises documented in writing. We're moving to have it declared unenforceable. Judge Morrison held up a hand. I'll take the motion under advisement. Continue, Ms. Coleman. Thank you, Your Honor. Patricia returned to her table. Now, let's discuss the real issue here. Mr. Pemberton has spent the morning painting Mrs. Whitmore as a gold digger, a woman who contributed nothing and wants everything. Let's examine that claim. She pulled another document from her briefcase. Your Honor, I'd like to introduce Defense Exhibit B. This is the original business plan for Trust Vault, dated March 2016. If you look at page 1, you'll see the author's name. She handed it to the bailiff. Judge Morrison examined it. The author is listed as Maya Washington, the judge said slowly. Not Bradley Whitmore, Patricia confirmed. Mrs. Whitmore wrote the original business plan that secured Trust Vault's first round of venture capital funding. The same plan Mr. Whitmore presented to investors as his own work. Brad shot forward in his seat. She helped with some of the writing. That doesn't mean... She didn't help, Mr. Whitmore. She wrote it. All 43 pages. While you were out playing golf with potential investors, she was home creating the document that would launch your empire. That's her word against mine. Patricia smiled. The expression reminded Maya of a cat that had just cornered a mouse.
Actually, it's not. Defense Exhibit C. Email correspondence between Mr. Whitmore and his college roommate, dated April 2016. She read aloud. Dude, you're not going to believe this. Maya finished the business plan and it's actually good. Like, really good. I'm going to present it to the VCs next week. She thinks I wrote it. LOL. Sometimes having a smart girlfriend pays off. The courtroom erupted in murmurs. Brad was on his feet. That email was stolen. It's private correspondence. You can't. It was obtained through legal discovery, Mr. Whitmore. Your former roommate was quite cooperative when we explained the subpoena process. Patricia's voice hardened. You've been taking credit for your wife's work since before you married her. The only thing you've ever built is a wall of lies. Chip grabbed Brad's arm and yanked him back into his seat. Don't say another word, he hissed. But Brad couldn't stop himself. So what if she wrote a business plan? I did everything else. The coding, the pitching, the hiring. She just sat at home with the baby. Lorraine, who had been sitting quietly beside Maya, finally spoke. Her voice was low, but it carried. You want to talk about the coding, Mr. Whitmore? Brad looked at her. Who even are you? You're not a lawyer. You're just some nurse. I'm Maya's mother, and I've been doing some research. Lorraine reached into her own bag and pulled out a folder. Tell me, when Trust Vault almost went bankrupt in January 2019, what saved it? Brad's eye twitched. I secured additional funding. From where? Private investors. What were their names? Brad hesitated. It was handled through an intermediary, a blind trust. The investors wanted anonymity. Lorraine nodded slowly. The Cornerstone Trust, based in Delaware, completely anonymous, completely untraceable, except, she opened her folder. I spent 40 years dealing with hospital administrators and insurance companies, Mr. Whitmore.
You know what that teaches you? How to follow paper trails. How to find the documents that people try to hide.
She handed a paper to Patricia, who approached the bench. Defense Exhibit D, Your Honor. These are the incorporation documents for the Cornerstone Trust. The sole trustee is listed as L.E. Washington, acting on behalf of the beneficiary, Maya Washington Whitmore. Maya's head snapped toward her mother. Mama, what? Hush, baby. Lorraine's eyes never left Brad. Your Honor, this document proves that the $500,000 that saved Trust Vault from bankruptcy came from my daughter. She used her inheritance from her grandmother to rescue her husband's company. And she did it anonymously because she loved him, because she didn't want to wound his pride. Brad's face went white. That's not possible. Maya doesn't have that kind of money. She's poor, Lorraine finished. From nothing, is that what you were going to say? Brad's mouth opened and closed. My mother cleaned houses for 30 years, Lorraine continued. She saved every penny she didn't spend on food and rent. When she died in 2015, she left Maya a trust worth $600,000. Maya never told you because she wanted you to love her for her, not for her money. Ironic, isn't it? She was hiding her wealth while you were hiding your contempt. This changes nothing, Chip said quickly, but his voice had lost its confidence. Even if Mrs. Whitmore invested in the company, she signed a prenup waiving her rights to equity. She invested marital funds into her husband's business, Patricia countered. Those funds were then commingled with company assets. Under Michigan law, commingled assets become marital property. The prenup specifically addresses premarital assets. Her investment was made after the marriage. The prenup doesn't cover it. Chip was flipping frantically through his documents. That's a technicality. That's the law. Patricia approached the bench. Your Honor, Mrs. Whitmore is not asking for half of trust vault out of greed. She's asking for recognition of the fact that she built it alongside her husband. She wrote the business plan. She saved the company from bankruptcy. She worked 18-hour days during the launch while raising a newborn. And when her husband repaid her by freezing her out of every account and trying to paint her as crazy, she still didn't reveal his secret. She protected his pride, even as he destroyed her life. Maya felt tears sliding down her cheeks. She didn't try to stop them. We're not just asking for equitable distribution, Patricia continued. We're asking this court to recognize the truth. Maya Washington Whitmore is not a gold digger. She's not a secretary. She's not the help. She is a co-founder of Trust Vault in every way that matters.
And we have the receipts to prove it.
Judge Morrison was studying the documents intently. When she looked up, her expression had shifted. Mr. Pemberton, she said slowly, your client testified earlier that Mrs. Whitmore contributed nothing to Trust Vault. In light of this evidence, would you like to revise that statement? Chip leaned over to whisper urgently with Brad. Brad was shaking his head vehemently. Mr. Pemberton? Chip stood reluctantly. Your Honor, my client maintains that while Mrs. Whitmore may have provided some assistance, the core intellectual property and business development was entirely his work. Some assistance, Patricia repeated. Writing the entire business plan is some assistance? Saving the company from bankruptcy is some assistance? Tell me, Mr.
Pemberton, what exactly would qualify as a significant contribution in your view? Does she need to have personally coded every line of software while simultaneously nursing a baby and being told she was worthless?
Your Honor, this is becoming argumentative. This is becoming honest, Patricia shot back. For the first time in 7 years. Judge Morrison banged her gavel once. That's enough. We're going to take a 15-minute recess. When we return, I want to hear Mr. Whitmore's response to these allegations. And Mr. Pemberton, I suggest you use this time to seriously reconsider your strategy. She stood. Everyone rose. As the judge disappeared into her chambers, Chip grabbed Brad's arm and practically dragged him toward the side door. They needed to talk, privately. Maya let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. Her mother's hand found hers under the table and squeezed. You okay, baby? Maya nodded, not trusting her voice. We're not done yet, Lorraine said quietly. That was just the warm-up. Patricia hasn't even gotten to the good stuff. Maya looked at her mother. There's more? Lorraine's expression was grim. Baby, what you found on that baby monitor? It's worse than you thought. Much worse. When I said I did some research, I wasn't just talking about the trust fund. Mama, what did you find? Before Lorraine could answer, Patricia approached. We need to discuss strategy for the next session. Mrs. Washington, do you have the documents we discussed? Lorraine pulled a thick envelope from her bag. Everything's here. The cloud backup, the transaction records, the witness statements. All of it. Patricia opened the envelope and scanned the contents. Her eyebrows rose. This is more than we hoped for. I spent 3 months gathering it, Lorraine said. I told you. 40 years of hospital bureaucracy teaches you things. Like how to be patient. Like how to build a case.
Like how to wait until you have everything you need before you strike. Maya was staring at her mother like she was seeing her for the first time.
Mama, I thought you were just going to help me find a lawyer. I didn't know you were... Building an arsenal? Lorraine smiled, but her eyes were hard. Baby girl, When you called me 3 months ago, crying so hard you couldn't breathe, telling me what that man had done to you, I made a decision. I was done watching from the sidelines. I was done letting you protect him." She took Maya's hands in both of hers. "You're my daughter. You're my only child. And that man thought he could destroy you because he thought you had no one. He thought your mama was just some old nurse from Detroit who didn't matter." Lorraine's grip tightened. He thought wrong. The doors opened. Brad and Chip were returning, their faces grim. Whatever they discussed, it hadn't improved their mood. Chip approached the defense table. His usual smugness had been replaced by something that looked almost like desperation. "Ms. Coleman, a word?" Patricia stood. "I'm listening." "My client is prepared to offer a revised settlement. 60% of the marital assets, shared custody of Genesis, and a public acknowledgement of Mrs. Whitmore's contributions to Trust Vault." Patricia looked at Maya. Maya looked at her mother. Lorraine shook her head once. "No," Patricia said. "You haven't even heard the full—" "The answer is no, Mr. Pemberton. Your client doesn't get to buy his way out of this. Not anymore." Chip's face reddened. "You're making a mistake. This offer won't be on the table after we resume. My client is being generous." "Your client is scared," Patricia said calmly. "And he should be. Because we haven't even gotten to the criminal allegations yet." Chip went pale. "What criminal allegations?" Patricia smiled. It was not a kind smile. "All rise!" Judge Morrison returned to the bench. The courtroom settled. "Ms. Coleman," the judge said, "you may proceed." Patricia stood. "Thank you, Your Honor. Earlier, Mrs. Whitmore mentioned recordings from a baby monitor. Mr. Pemberton dismissed these recordings as inadmissible. He was wrong." "Objection," Chip said weakly. "Michigan is a two-party consent state. For telephone conversations and private communications, yes," Patricia agreed. "However, these recordings were made by a device that automatically backs up to the cloud. A device manufactured and sold by Trust Vault. A device whose terms of service, which Mr. Whitmore himself approved, explicitly state that all recordings may be stored and accessed by the account holder." She held up a printed document. "Mrs. Whitmore is the account holder. She has every legal right to access these recordings. And what she found on them is disturbing." Patricia nodded to one of her associates, who connected a laptop to the courtroom's display system. "Your Honor, I'd like to play Defense Exhibit E." The screen flickered to life. The image was grainy, clearly from a baby monitor's night vision camera. A crib was visible in the corner, a small figure sleeping peacefully. But the audio was crystal clear. 2 male voices. "The offshore accounts are set up. Cayman Islands. We moved the money before the audit." That was Brad's voice, unmistakable. "What about your wife? She's been asking questions about the books." A second voice. Maya didn't recognize it. "Maya? She's not smart enough to figure it out. Besides, I've been planting seeds, telling her therapist she's paranoid, suggesting she might need medication. By the time anyone listens to her, she'll sound crazy." Brad laughed on the recording. "And if that doesn't work, I'll just divorce her. Prenup takes care of everything. She signed away her rights 3 hours before the wedding. Stupidest decision she ever made."
What about the kid? Custody fight might get ugly, but I've got leverage. No job, no money, no credibility. What judge is going to give a hysterical black woman full custody over me? The recording ended. The courtroom was absolutely silent. Maya felt like she'd been punched in the stomach. She'd heard parts of the recordings before, but not this. Not the part where he called her stupid. Not the part where he talked about her race like it was a disadvantage he could exploit. Brad was staring at the screen, his face a mask of barely contained panic. Chip looked like he wanted to sink through the floor. Judge Morrison's expression had turned to stone. "Mr. Whitmore," the judge said, her voice dangerously calm.
Would you like to explain what we just heard? Brad shocked to his feet. That was taken out of context. We were joking. It was locker room talk. I never meant any of it. You discussed hiding money in offshore accounts, Patricia said.
You discussed manipulating your wife's mental health treatment. You made racist comments about her chances in a custody battle. Which part was the joke exactly? I want a recess, Chip said desperately. I need to confer with my client. You just had a recess, Judge Morrison said. Sit down, Mr. Pemberton. Mr. Whitmore, I'm going to ask you one time. Are there offshore accounts? Have you been hiding assets from this court? Brad looked at Chip. Chip was staring at the table. I take the Fifth. A gasp went through the gallery. You're taking the Fifth Amendment in a civil proceeding? Judge Morrison leaned forward. Mr. Whitmore, do you understand that invoking your right against self-incrimination in a civil case allows me to draw an adverse inference? Meaning, I can assume that whatever you're hiding is exactly as bad as it appears? I want a lawyer, Brad said. A criminal lawyer. I'm not saying anything else. A criminal lawyer. Judge Morrison turned to Patricia. Ms. Coleman, you mentioned criminal allegations. I assume you've reported this to the appropriate authorities? Patricia nodded. We contacted the FBI yesterday, Your Honor. Agents are reviewing the recordings and the financial documents we've provided. We expect charges to be filed within the week. Brad's face went from pale to gray. This is a setup, he said, his voice rising. She planned this. She hacked my systems. She stole private conversations. This is entrapment. I didn't hack anything, Maya said quietly. The whole courtroom turned to look at her. You gave me the passwords, Brad. 3 years ago, when you wanted me to set up the nursery monitoring system. You said you were too busy. You never changed them. You never thought I'd actually look. She stood up slowly. You thought I was too stupid to figure out the cloud backup. You thought I was too broken to fight back. You thought you could gaslight me into a mental institution and take everything? Her voice was steady now, strong. You were wrong. Brad stared at her. For just a second, Maya saw something flicker in his eyes. Fear. Real fear. Then it was gone, replaced by the cold contempt she knew so well. You'll regret this, he said. You think you've won? I have resources. I have connections. This isn't over. Yes, Lorraine said, standing beside her daughter. It is. She stepped forward, looking at Brad with the calm assessment of a woman who had seen death up close and wasn't impressed by threats. You know what I learned in 40 years of nursing, Mr. Whitmore? I learned that bullies are all the same. They're big and loud when they think they have power. But the moment someone pushes back, they crumble. Every single time. She smiled. You're crumbling, Mr. Whitmore. I can see it. And it's beautiful. Judge Morrison banged her gavel. This court is going to take a 30-minute recess while I review the evidence that's been presented. When we return, I'll be issuing preliminary rulings on asset division and custody. She looked directly at Brad. Mr. Whitmore, I strongly suggest you use this time to contact that criminal attorney. You're going to need one. The gavel came down again. Court was adjourned. But Maya knew this was just the beginning. Brad still had money. He still had connections. And he was exactly the kind of man who would burn everything down before he let her win. The real fight was still coming. And she was ready. The 30 minutes felt like 30 hours. Maya sat in the small conference room adjacent to the courtroom, her hands wrapped around a cup of coffee that had long gone cold. Patricia was on the phone in the corner, speaking in low, urgent tones.
Lorraine sat beside Maya, silent but solid, her presence an anchor. "Mama? Why didn't she tell me? About the trust,
About the money you used to save his company." Lorraine was quiet for a moment.
because you asked me not to interfere. You said you wanted to handle your marriage yourself. You said Brad needed to feel like a man."
Maya laughed bitterly.
I was so stupid. "No." Lorraine's voice was firm. "You were in love. There's a difference. Love makes us do foolish things. It makes us believe people when we shouldn't. It makes us protect people who don't deserve protection." She took Maya's hand. "But you're not stupid, baby. You never were. You built that man's empire with your brain and your sweat. You saved his company with your grandmother's money. You raised his daughter while he chased other women. The only stupid thing you did was let him convince you that you were less than you are." Maya's eyes burned. "I believed him, Mama. When he said I was crazy. When he said I was imagining things. I almost checked myself into a facility.
I almost gave up my daughter because he made me think I wasn't fit to be her mother."
But you didn't." Lorraine squeezed her hand. "You fought. You recorded. You gathered evidence. You called me. That's not crazy, Maya. That's survival."
Patricia ended her call and walked over. Her expression was troubled.
"We have a problem."
Maya's stomach dropped.
"What kind of problem?"
"Brad's criminal attorney just arrived. Marcus Webb. You've heard of him?"
Lorraine's face darkened. "The fixer. He got that senator off on the bribery charges last year."
"The same." Patricia sat down across from them.
"Webb is already making moves. He's filed an emergency motion to seal all the recordings, claiming they were obtained illegally. He's also filed a motion to have me disqualified, arguing that my firm has a conflict of interest because we once represented a company Trust Vault acquired." "That's ridiculous," Maya said. "We never—" "It doesn't matter if it's ridiculous. It's a delay tactic."
Webb is trying to slow everything down so Brad can move assets, destroy evidence, and mount a proper defense. Patricia's jaw tightened.
"He's good at this. Very good."
"So what do we do?"
"We go back in there and we hit hard. Before Webb can file his motions, before the judge can consider them. We have one shot to put Brad on the record before his new lawyer shuts him up completely."
Lorraine stood. "Then let's not waste any more time." They returned to the courtroom to find it buzzing with new energy. The press gallery had doubled in size. Word had gotten out about the baby monitor recordings. This was no longer a simple divorce case. It was a scandal. Brad was already seated, but he wasn't alone anymore. A new man sat beside him, silver-haired and impeccably dressed, radiating the kind of confidence that came from decades of getting guilty people off the hook. Marcus Webb. Chip Pemberton had been relegated to the second row, looking like a man who had just realized he was in over his head. Webb caught Maya's eye as she walked to her table. He smiled pleasantly, the kind of smile a snake might give a mouse. "Miss Coleman," Webb said, rising smoothly, "I don't believe we've had the pleasure." "Mr. Webb," Patricia's voice was ice, "I've heard of your work. I can't say I'm a fan." "The feeling is mutual, I'm sure." Webb turned to the bench as Judge Morrison entered. "Your Honor, I've just entered my appearance on behalf of Mr. Whitmore. I have several motions to file that I believe should be heard before we proceed." Judge Morrison sat down heavily. She looked tired. "Mr. Webb, I've been on this case for 3 hours already. What motions?" "First, a motion to seal all audio recordings that have been entered into evidence. My client's right to privacy was waived when he conducted criminal conversations in a room equipped with recording devices he knew about," Patricia interrupted. The terms of service for Trust Vault's own baby monitoring system explicitly state that all recordings may be accessed by the account holder. Mr. Whitmore wrote those terms, or at least he approved them. Webb didn't miss a beat. Nevertheless, the recordings capture conversations with third parties who did not consent. We're moving to exclude on those grounds. The third party in question was discussing committing crimes, Patricia countered. He has no reasonable expectation of privacy while conspiring to commit fraud. Judge Morrison held up a hand. I've already ruled on this issue during the recess. The recordings are admissible. Motion denied. Webb's smile tightened slightly. Very well. Then I'd like to file a motion to disqualify Miss Coleman's firm. Coleman and Associates previously represented DataStream Inc., which was acquired by Trust Vault in 2021. This creates a clear conflict. There is no conflict, Patricia said. We represented DataStream in an employment dispute. We never had access to any Trust Vault proprietary information. The acquisition happened 2 years after our representation ended. Your Honor, even the appearance of impropriety. Mr. Webb, Judge Morrison's voice was sharp. I'm not going to disqualify counsel based on a tangential connection that ended years ago. If you have substantive objections, I'll hear them. Otherwise, stop wasting my time. Motion denied. Webb nodded slowly. He didn't look defeated. He looked like a man recalculating. In that case, Your Honor, my client would like to make a statement. Patricia shot to her feet. Objection! Mr. Whitmore already testified. He can't simply— He can clarify his previous testimony, Webb said smoothly. Given the serious allegations that have been made against him, he has a right to respond. Judge Morrison considered this. I'll allow it, briefly. Mr. Whitmore, the stand. Brad walked to the witness stand. He looked different now, calmer. Webb had clearly coached him during the recess. Your Honor, Brad began, his voice measured. I want to apologize to the court. The recordings you heard were taken out of context. They represent conversations I had during an extremely stressful period in my company's history. I was venting. I was exaggerating. I never actually intended to do any of the things discussed. You discussed hiding assets in offshore accounts, Patricia said. Loose talk. Speculation. Every business owner considers tax strategies. That doesn't mean I actually did anything illegal. You discussed manipulating your wife's mental health treatment to make her seem crazy. Brad's expression shifted to wounded innocence. I was concerned about Maya's well-being. She was displaying paranoid behavior. She was making accusations. I talked to her therapist because I was worried, not because I was trying to manipulate anyone. You made racist comments about her chances in a custody battle. Brad flinched. This one was harder to spin. I'm not proud of what I said. I was angry. I was frustrated. But words spoken in private don't reflect my true character. I love my daughter. I've never treated Maya differently because of her race. Maya felt her fingernails digging into her palms. The audacity. The smooth, practiced lies. Mrs. Whitmore, Webb said, turning to her, has clearly been through a difficult time. I have compassion for her situation. But I think we need to ask ourselves whether these recordings, taken in isolation, really prove criminal intent, or whether they're simply the rantings of a stressed husband who is dealing with a troubled marriage. Patricia stood. Your Honor, this is revisionist history. Mr. Whitmore isn't just accused of saying bad things. He's accused of doing bad things. We have evidence of actual financial misconduct, not just conversations about it. Then present it, Webb said calmly. We'd like to see this evidence. Patricia looked at Maya. Maya nodded. Defense Exhibit F, Patricia said.
bank records showing transfers from Trust Vault's operating account to a shell company in the Cayman Islands called Coral Ventures LLC. Total transfers over the past 18 months, $4.7 million. She handed the documents to the bailiff. These transfers were made without board approval. They don't appear in any shareholder reports. And the sole owner of Coral Ventures LLC is Bradley Whitmore. Brad's calm facade cracked slightly. Those were legitimate business expenses, international expansion, marketing initiatives. In the Cayman Islands? Patricia raised an eyebrow.
A country famous for its robust software development industry? A few people in the gallery laughed. Your Honor, Webb interjected, financial matters are complex. What looks suspicious to a layperson may have perfectly legitimate explanations. We request time to prepare a full accounting. You've had time, Judge Morrison said. Mr. Whitmore has had 6 months since this divorce was filed to get his financial house in order. If he can't explain these transfers now, I'm not inclined to give him more time to fabricate an explanation. Webb's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Your Honor, I must object to the characterization. Objection noted. Continue, Miss Coleman. Patricia pulled out another document. Defense Exhibit G. This is a forensic analysis of Trust Vault's servers, conducted by an independent cybersecurity firm. It shows that 3 days after Mrs. Whitmore filed for divorce, someone accessed the company's financial systems and deleted over 2,000 files related to international transactions. She let that sink in. The access was made using Mr. Whitmore's personal credentials from his home IP address at 3:47 in the morning. Brad's face was pale now. Someone must have stolen my login information. Your login information that only you knew? That was protected by two-factor authentication tied to your personal phone? It's possible. Hackers are sophisticated. Hackers who just happened to delete only the files that would prove financial misconduct? Who left everything else untouched? Patricia shook her head. Your Honor, this isn't speculation anymore. This is evidence of obstruction of justice. Mr. Whitmore destroyed evidence after litigation had begun. Allegedly destroyed, Webb said quickly. We have no proof that those files contained anything incriminating. For all we know, they were routine documents that were scheduled for deletion anyway. Then why were they deleted at 3:47 in the morning, 3 days after the divorce filing? Webb had no answer for that. Judge Morrison made a note. I'm going to request that the independent analysis be submitted to the FBI agents who are apparently already investigating this matter. Mr. Whitmore, I strongly suggest you cooperate fully with their inquiry. My client will cooperate as his constitutional rights allow, Webb said carefully. I'm sure he will. The judge's tone suggested she expected nothing of the sort. Patricia wasn't done. Your Honor, we have one more piece of evidence to present. Defense Exhibit H. She nodded to her associate, who pulled up a new document on the screen. This is a life insurance policy taken out by Mr. Whitmore 18 months ago. The policy is for $10 million. The beneficiary is listed as Trust Vault LLC, not his wife or daughter. Maya frowned. She hadn't known about this. Corporate life insurance is standard practice, Webb said dismissively. It is, Patricia agreed. But what's interesting is the rider attached to this policy. If Mrs. Whitmore were to be declared mentally incompetent and placed in a care facility, Mr. Whitmore would gain power of attorney over all her assets, including the Cornerstone Trust that he didn't know about. And if something were to happen to Mrs. Whitmore while she was incapacitated, she let the implication hang in the air. Maya felt ice water run through her veins.
He was planning to have me committed. And then...
We don't know what he was planning, Patricia said carefully. But the financial incentives are clear. With Mrs. Whitmore incapacitated, Mr. Whitmore would control her assets. If she died while incapacitated, as her husband, he would inherit. Brad was on his feet. This is insane. You are accusing me of planning to murder my wife? I'm presenting evidence of financial arrangements that would benefit you significantly if your wife were unable to manage her own affairs, or if she were to pass away. Patricia's voice was cold. The interpretation is up to the court. Webb grabbed Brad's arm and pulled him back down. Don't say anything else. But Brad was beyond control now. The mask had finally slipped completely. You think you're so smart, he snarled at Maya. You and your mother, coming in here with your fake evidence and your conspiracy theories. You were nothing when I found you. You'd still be nothing if it weren't for me. Brad, stop, Webb hissed. No. Brad shook off his lawyer's hand. I'm done pretending. You want to know the truth? Yes, I took the money. It was my company. I built it. I deserved it. And yes, I wanted you gone, Maya. You were dead weight. You were holding me back. The courtroom was absolutely silent. Everything I did because you weren't enough. You weren't smart enough. You weren't connected enough. You weren't white enough. Maya heard Lorraine draw in a sharp breath beside her. You want to talk about racism? Brad laughed bitterly. You want to know why I married you? Because you made me look good. Progressive tech CEO with a black wife. It played well in the press. It helped with diversity initiatives. You were a prop, Maya. That's all you ever were. The words hit Maya like physical blows, each one landing in a place that was already bruised. But she didn't cry. She didn't flinch. Because for the first time, she was seeing Brad clearly. Not the charming man she'd married. Not the stressed husband she'd tried to understand. Just a small, bitter person who had built his entire life on other people's work and was now watching it crumble. Are you done? Maya asked quietly. Brad stared at her. Because I have something to say too. She stood up slowly. Patricia touched her arm, but Maya shook her head. 7 years ago, I fell in love with a man I thought was brilliant, kind, ambitious. I gave him everything I had, my ideas, my money, my grandmother's inheritance, my youth, my trust, my daughter. Her voice was steady, clear. And in return, he gave me nothing but pain. He called me stupid when I wrote the plans that made him rich. He called me crazy when I noticed he was cheating. He called me worthless when I asked for respect. She took a step toward the witness stand. But here's what you never understood, Brad. I am not nothing. I never was. I come from a woman who worked double shifts to put food on the table. I come from a grandmother who cleaned houses and saved every penny so her granddaughter would have options. I come from generations of black women who survived worse than you could ever imagine. Lorraine was crying silently. She didn't wipe the tears. You thought you broke me. You didn't. You thought you silenced me. You couldn't. You thought my family had nothing to offer. But my mother is here. My lawyers are here. My evidence is here. And you? Maya looked at him with something that wasn't quite hatred. It was closer to pity. You're going to prison, Brad. And when you get out, I'll still be standing. My daughter will still be thriving. And no one will remember your name. The courtroom erupted in murmurs. Judge Morrison banged her gavel, but even she seemed moved. Brad looked like he'd been slapped. For the first time since Maya had known him, he had absolutely nothing to say. Webb was furiously scribbling notes. Chip had his head in his hands. And then, the courtroom doors opened. Everyone turned.
Two men in dark suits walked in. One of them held up a badge. FBI. We're looking for Bradley Harrison Whitmore III. Brad's face went white. Bradley Whitmore, you're under arrest for wire fraud, money laundering, and obstruction of justice. You have the right to remain silent. The agents moved toward the witness stand. Brad looked at Webb, at Chip, at anyone who might save him. No one moved. "This isn't over," Brad said as the agents cuffed him. "This isn't—" "Save it for your lawyer," one of the agents said, pulling him toward the door. As Brad was led past Maya's table, he stopped. The agents tried to move him along, but he planted his feet. "You'll regret this," he said to Maya. His voice was low, meant only for her. "I have friends. I have resources you don't know about. This isn't over." Maya looked at him steadily. "Yes, Brad, it is." The agents pulled him away. The courtroom doors swung shut behind them. And just like that, the man who had terrorized Maya for 7 years was gone. Judge Morrison cleared her throat. "Well, that was eventful." She shuffled her papers. "Given the circumstances, I'm going to adjourn for the day. We'll reconvene tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. to discuss the remaining civil matters." She looked at Maya. "Mrs. Whitmore, I've seen a lot in my years on the bench. I've seen people lie. I've seen people cheat. I've seen people destroy each other over money and pride. But I've rarely seen someone stand up the way you did today." The judge paused. "Whatever happens tomorrow, I want you to know that you should be proud of yourself. Your mother should be proud. Your daughter will be proud when she's old enough to understand." Maya nodded, not trusting her voice. "Court is adjourned." The gavel came down one final time. Lorraine wrapped her arms around Maya. Patricia was already on her phone, coordinating with the FBI agents. The reporters were rushing to file their stories. But Maya just stood there, holding her mother, finally allowing herself to feel what she'd been suppressing for hours. It wasn't triumph. It wasn't joy. It was relief. The weight she'd been carrying for 7 years was finally beginning to lift. But as she held her mother, Maya couldn't shake Brad's final words. "I have friends. I have resources you don't know about." The arrest was just the beginning. The real battle was still to come. And somewhere, in the back of her mind, Maya knew that Brad Whitmore was not the kind of man who accepted defeat. Not now. Not ever. 3 weeks passed before Brad made bail. $10 million, posted by a consortium of investors who apparently still believed in him. Maya found out through Patricia, who called her at 7 in the morning with the news. "He's out." Maya's blood went cold. She was standing in her mother's kitchen, making breakfast for Genesis. The little girl was at the table, drawing with crayons, oblivious to the storm raging around her. "When?" "Last night. His lawyers kept it quiet. Ankle monitor, surrendered passport, the usual. But he's free to move around the state." Maya gripped the phone tighter. "Can he come here?" "There's a restraining order in place. He can't come within 500 feet of you, Genesis, or your mother's home. If he violates it, he goes straight back to jail." "And if he doesn't care about going back to jail?" Patricia was silent for a moment. "I've arranged for private security. Someone will be watching the house around the clock until the civil trial is resolved." Maya looked at Genesis, who was carefully coloring a picture of a house with 3 people in front of it. Mommy, Genesis, and Grandma Lorraine. No Daddy. "Okay," Maya said quietly. "What happens next?" "The divorce proceedings resume tomorrow. Judge Morrison wants to finalize the asset division and custody arrangements. Given everything that's happened, I expect it to be straightforward." "Nothing with Brad is ever straightforward." "No," Patricia agreed. which is why I need you to be prepared. Marcus Webb is still his attorney.
He's going to try something. I don't know what yet, but men like Webb always have a card up their sleeve. Maya hung up and stared out the window. Somewhere in this city, Brad was free, angry, desperate. And she knew him well enough to know that desperate Brad was the most dangerous Brad of all. Lorraine appeared in the doorway.
I heard. He's out, Mama. I know.
Lorraine walked over and put her hand on Maya's shoulder.
We knew this was coming. We prepared for it. Did we? Did we really prepare for what he might do?
Lorraine turned Maya to face her.
Listen to me. That man has spent 7 years making you afraid, making you small, making you doubt yourself. Don't let him do it again. Not now. Not when we're this close.
I'm not afraid for me, Maya's voice cracked.
I'm afraid for Jenny. If he tries to take her, he won't. You don't know that. I know that man is a coward.
Lorraine's voice was fierce.
He attacks people he thinks are weak.
He runs from people who fight back. You fought back, Maya. You won. And now he's going to try to scare you into giving up what you've gained. She took Maya's face in her hands. Don't let him. The next morning, Maya walked into Wayne County Circuit Court for what she hoped would be the last time. Patricia was beside her. Lorraine was one step behind. The courtroom was emptier than before. Most of the press had moved on to other scandals. But there were still a few reporters in the gallery, and Maya could feel their eyes on her as she took her seat. Brad was already there. He looked different, thinner, paler. The confident swagger was gone, replaced by something hunted. He was wearing a suit that didn't quite fit anymore, and his eyes darted around the room like a cornered animal. Marcus Webb sat beside him, as polished as ever, but even he seemed subdued. Judge Morrison entered, and everyone rose. Be seated. The judge settled into her chair and opened her file. We're here to finalize the dissolution of marriage between Bradley Whitmore and Maya Washington Whitmore, and to resolve the outstanding issues of asset division and child custody. She looked at both tables. I've reviewed all the evidence presented. I've considered the testimony. And I've taken into account the federal charges pending against Mr. Whitmore. She paused. Before I issue my rulings, does either party wish to make a statement? Webb rose. Your Honor, my client would like to address the court. Judge Morrison raised an eyebrow. Very well. Mr. Whitmore? Brad stood slowly. For a long moment he said nothing, just stared at Maya across the aisle. Then he spoke. I made mistakes. Maya felt her jaw tighten. I was not a good husband. I was not always honest. I let my ambition blind me to what was important. Brad's voice was measured, rehearsed. But I am still Genesis's father. I still love my daughter. And I believe I deserve a chance to be part of her life. He turned to face the judge directly. I'm asking for shared custody, not primary, not even 50-50. Just weekends, a few hours a week to maintain a relationship with my child. Is that too much to ask? Judge Morrison's expression was unreadable. Ms. Coleman, response? Patricia stood. Your Honor, Mr. Whitmore is currently under federal indictment for wire fraud, money laundering, and obstruction of justice. He made recorded statements discussing his intent to gaslight his wife and manipulate custody proceedings. He made racist remarks about Mrs. Whitmore's chances of obtaining custody, and he has shown a consistent pattern of prioritizing his own interests over the well-being of his family. She paused. Genesis Whitmore is 5 years old. She has been raised primarily by her mother.
She has a stable, loving home with her mother and grandmother. Introducing a parent who is facing potential imprisonment, who has demonstrated contempt for her mother, and who has shown little interest in her day-to-day life, would be deeply destabilizing. "I love my daughter," Brad interjected. "Do you?" Patricia turned to face him. "When was her last doctor's appointment?" Brad hesitated. I'm not sure." "It was 3 weeks ago. Routine checkup. She's in the 75th percentile for height and weight. She has a slight astigmatism and needs glasses. Her pediatrician's name is Dr. Anita Patel. Her favorite color is purple. Her best friend at school is a girl named Sophia. Her favorite food is macaroni and cheese with exactly 4 carrot sticks on the side." Patricia's voice hardened. Mrs. Whitmore knows all of this because she is present in her daughter's life every single day. "Can you say the same, Mr. Whitmore?" Brad's mouth opened and closed. "I've been busy building a company." "You've been busy committing crimes." Patricia turned back to the judge. "Your Honor, we're asking for sole legal and physical custody to be awarded to Mrs. Whitmore, with supervised visitation for Mr. Whitmore, contingent on the resolution of his criminal case and a psychological evaluation." Webb stood quickly. "Your Honor, my client has rights. You can't strip a father of custody based on pending charges. He's innocent until proven guilty." "In criminal court, yes," Judge Morrison said. "In family court, my primary concern is the best interests of the child. And based on everything I've seen and heard, I have serious concerns about Mr. Whitmore's fitness as a custodial parent." Brad slammed his hand on the table. "This is insane. You're going to let her take everything? My company, my money, my daughter?" "Mr. Whitmore," the judge warned. "No." Brad was on his feet, his composure finally cracking completely. "I'm not going to sit here and let this happen. I built Trust Vault. Me, not her. She wrote a business plan? So what? I executed it. I pitched the investors. I made it work." "With her money," Patricia said quietly. "Money she hid from me." Brad pointed at Maya. "She lied. She pretended to be poor. She let me think I was supporting her when she had $500,000 sitting in a trust fund. If anyone committed fraud in this marriage, it was her." Maya felt something snap inside her. "I hid my money because you would have spent it." Her voice was calm, but there was steel underneath. "The same way you spent everything else. On clubs, on women, on your ego. I hid it because I knew the man you really were, even when I was pretending not to." "You knew nothing. I knew you were cheating 6 months after we got married. I knew you were lying on the financial reports. I knew you were using our daughter's nursery to conduct illegal business deals." Maya stood up. "I knew all of it, Brad. I just loved you too much to admit it." "You loved my money."
I loved the man I thought you were. Maya's voice cracked. "The man you pretended to be. The one who said he'd take care of me. The one who promised our daughter would never want for anything. That man didn't exist, did he? He was just a mask you wore to get what you wanted." Brad stared at her. For just a second, something flickered in his eyes. Something that might have been shame. Then it was gone. "I want a paternity test." The words dropped into the silence like a bomb. Maya felt the blood drain from her face. "What?" "A paternity test." Brad's smile was cruel now, all pretense abandoned. "You want to talk about lies? Let's talk about the truth. Genesis was born 11 months after our wedding. You told me she was premature. But I've been doing some thinking, some calculating, and I'm not sure she's mine." Maya couldn't breathe. "Your Honor," Brad continued, "I'm requesting a court-ordered DNA test before any custody arrangements are finalized. If Genesis isn't my biological child, I have no legal obligation to her whatsoever." Lorraine was on her feet. "You evil, lying!"
Mama. Maya's voice was barely a whisper. Don't. Patricia recovered first. Your Honor, this is a transparent attempt to delay proceedings and cause emotional distress. Mr. Whitmore has acknowledged Genesis as his daughter for 5 years. He signed the birth certificate. He's legally her father, regardless of biology. But if she's not biologically mine, Brad said, then Mrs. Whitmore committed paternity fraud, which would affect the asset division, the custody arrangement, everything. Judge Morrison's expression was hard. Mr. Whitmore, are you seriously claiming, after 5 years, that you don't believe Genesis is your daughter? I'm claiming I deserve to know the truth. Don't I have that right? The judge turned to Maya. Mrs. Whitmore? Maya was shaking. She could feel everyone's eyes on her. The reporters, the lawyers, her mother. She's his daughter, Maya said quietly. There was no one else. She's his. Then you won't mind proving it, Brad said smugly. Your Honor, Patricia interjected, even if we agree to a paternity test, Mr. Whitmore cannot disestablish paternity after 5 years under Michigan law. He's legally Genesis's father, regardless of the results. But the results would affect public perception, Webb added smoothly. They would affect settlement negotiations. They would affect Mrs. Whitmore's credibility. Maya understood then. This wasn't about Genesis. This wasn't about truth. This was Brad's final weapon, his last attempt to hurt her. Order the test, Maya said. Everyone turned to look at her. Maya, Patricia said carefully, you don't have to. Order it. Maya's voice was steady now. I have nothing to hide. Genesis is his daughter. I'll prove it, and then he'll have nothing left. No more accusations, no more lies, just the truth. She looked at Brad. And the truth is that you are Genesis's father. You just never bothered to act like one. Judge Morrison nodded slowly. Very well. I'm ordering a DNA test to be completed within 72 hours. Results will be sealed and delivered directly to this court. In the meantime, all proceedings are stayed pending the results. She banged her gavel. We're adjourned. The next 3 days were the longest of Maya's life. She tried to maintain routine for Genesis. School in the morning, homework in the afternoon, dinner with Grandma Lorraine, bedtime stories and butterfly kisses. But inside, Maya was falling apart. She knew Genesis was Brad's daughter. She knew it with absolute certainty. There had never been anyone else. Not before Brad, not during the marriage, never. But doubt is a poison. And Brad had spent 7 years teaching her to doubt herself. What if the test was wrong? What if there was some error? What if Brad had found a way to manipulate the results? The night before the results were due, Maya couldn't sleep. She sat in the living room, staring at nothing, when Lorraine found her. You're going to make yourself sick, Lorraine said softly. I can't stop thinking about it. About what? The test? Lorraine sat down beside her. Baby, you know the truth. Why are you letting him get in your head? Because that's what he does. Maya's voice broke. That's what he's always done. He makes me question everything. My memory, my sanity, my worth. Even now, even after everything, I can feel him in my head, whispering that I'm wrong, that I'm lying, that I'm crazy. You're not crazy. Then why do I feel like this? Lorraine took her daughter's hands. Because trauma doesn't disappear overnight. Because you spent 7 years being told you couldn't trust yourself. It takes time to unlearn that. It takes practice. She squeezed Maya's hands. But you're doing it. Every day you wake up and fight for yourself and your daughter, you're unlearning his lies. Every time you stand up in that courtroom and speak your truth, you're proving him wrong. This test? It's just another battle, and you're going to win it, just like you've won all the others. What if I don't? Then we'll deal with it. Lorraine's voice was fierce. Whatever happens, I'm here. Patricia's here. You're not alone anymore, Maya. You never have to face anything alone again. Maya leaned into her mother's embrace and finally let herself cry. The next morning, they returned to court. The atmosphere was tense. Even the bailiff seemed nervous. Brad sat rigidly at his table, Webb beside him. They didn't look confident. They looked like men waiting for a verdict. Judge Morrison entered with a sealed envelope in her hand. "I have the results of the court-ordered DNA test," she announced.
Before I open this, I want to remind both parties that regardless of the outcome, the legal issues we've discussed remain unchanged. Mr. Whitmore cannot disestablish paternity after 5 years of acknowledged parenthood. She looked at Brad. "Do you understand that, Mr. Whitmore? Whatever this envelope contains, you are still legally Genesis's father. You still have obligations to her." Brad nodded stiffly. The judge opened the envelope. She read the contents silently, her expression revealing nothing. Then she looked up. The DNA test confirms that Bradley Harrison Whitmore III is the biological father of Genesis Maya Whitmore. Probability of paternity, 99.9998%. Maya let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. Brad's face went pale, then red, then pale again. That's impossible," he stammered. "There must be a mistake." "There's no mistake, Mr. Whitmore." Judge Morrison's voice was ice. "Your daughter is your daughter. You requested this test to humiliate your wife. It backfired." She set the paper down. "In my 23 years on the bench, I have rarely seen behavior as reprehensible as yours. You have lied. You have cheated. You have stolen. You have manipulated. And when all else failed, you tried to disown your own child to hurt her mother." The judge's voice rose. "Genesis Whitmore is an innocent 5-year-old girl. She doesn't understand why her father isn't home. She doesn't understand why her mother cries at night. She doesn't understand any of this. And you were willing to publicly question whether she was even yours, just to gain leverage in a divorce settlement." Judge Morrison leaned forward. "I am awarding full legal and physical custody to Maya Washington Whitmore. Mr. Whitmore will have no visitation rights until he completes a court-approved parenting program and psychological evaluation. He will pay child support in the amount of $5,000 per month, adjusted annually for inflation." Brad shot to his feet. "You can't!" "I can." The judge's voice was final. "And I am. Furthermore, given the evidence of financial misconduct, I am awarding Mrs. Whitmore 60% of all marital assets, including her documented investment in trust vault and appreciation thereof." "That's millions of dollars," Webb protested. "Then Mr. Whitmore should have thought of that before he committed fraud." Judge Morrison gathered her papers. "This court is adjourned. The marriage of Bradley Whitmore and Maya Washington Whitmore is hereby dissolved." The gavel came down. Maya sat frozen. It was over. It was actually over. Lorraine wrapped her arms around her. Patricia was shaking her hand. Somewhere, a reporter was talking rapidly into a phone. But Maya couldn't take her eyes off Brad. He was slumped in his chair, staring at nothing. Webb was packing up his briefcase, already distancing himself from a lost cause. Brad looked up and caught Maya's eye. For one long moment, they just looked at each other. Two people who had once promised to love each other forever. Two strangers now. Then Brad stood and walked toward the door. He didn't say anything, didn't threaten, didn't rage. He just left. And somehow, that was worse than any of his threats. Because Maya knew Brad Whitmore. She knew that silence wasn't surrender. It was planning. And whatever he was planning, she needed to be ready. 6 weeks after the divorce was finalized, Maya got the call she had been dreading. "He's gone." Patricia's voice was tight with controlled urgency. Maya gripped the phone harder. "What do you mean, gone?" "Brad cut his ankle monitor last night. He missed his check-in with his parole officer this morning. The FBI is looking for him, but so far nothing." Maya's heart stopped. She looked across the room at Genesis, who was playing with her dolls on the floor, completely unaware that her world was about to shift again. "Does he know where we are?" "The restraining order has your mother's address on file, so yes, he knows." Maya was already moving. "I'm taking Genesis somewhere safe. I'll call you when we get there." "Maya, wait. The FBI wants to put you in protective custody. They think Brad might try to contact you." "Contact me? Or hurt me?" Patricia didn't answer. That was answer enough. Maya hung up and knelt beside her daughter. "Baby, we're going to go on a little trip. Just you, me, and Grandma. Won't that be fun?" Genesis looked up with her father's blue eyes. "Where are we going, Mommy?" "Somewhere special, but we have to leave right now. Can you be a big girl and grab your backpack?" "Can I bring Mr. Whiskers?" Genesis held up her stuffed cat. "Of course, baby. Hurry now." Lorraine appeared in the doorway. One look at Maya's face told her everything. "How long do we have?" "I don't know. Maybe hours. Maybe minutes." Lorraine nodded once. "I'll get the car. You get the bags. Don't pack anything we can't carry." They were out of the house in 7 minutes. Maya had learned to move fast. 7 years with Brad had taught her that much. They drove north, away from Detroit, away from everything familiar. Patricia had arranged a safe house through a network of domestic violence advocates. A small cabin in the Upper Peninsula, off the grid, untraceable. For 3 days they waited. Genesis played in the yard, chasing butterflies and picking wildflowers, blissfully unaware of the danger. Lorraine cooked meals and told stories and pretended everything was normal. Maya watched the road and jumped at every sound and slept with a knife under her pillow. On the 4th day, her phone rang. Unknown number. Maya's thumb hovered over the decline button, but something made her answer. "Hello, Maya." Brad's voice was calm, conversational, like they were old friends catching up. "How did you get this number?" "I have resources, remember? I told you this wasn't over." Maya walked away from the cabin, out of earshot of Genesis and Lorraine. Her hands were shaking, but her voice was steady. "What do you want, Brad?" "What I've always wanted. What's mine? My company, my money, my daughter." "You have none of those things anymore. The court made sure of that." "The court," Brad laughed. "The court is a joke. A system designed to protect people like you from people like me. But systems can be beaten, Maya. Rules can be broken. Judges can be bought." "Is that a threat?" "It's a fact. I've spent the last 6 weeks liquidating assets the FBI doesn't know about, moving money they can't trace, building a new identity in a country that doesn't have an extradition treaty with the United States." Maya's blood went cold. "You're running." "I'm starting over, and I want you to come with me." She almost laughed. "You're insane." "Am I?" Brad's voice dropped. "Think about it, Maya. I still have money, a lot of it, more than you'll ever see from that settlement. We could disappear together. You, me, Genesis. Start fresh somewhere warm. Forget everything that happened." "You tried to destroy me. You tried to take my daughter. You called me a prop." "I was angry. I said things I didn't mean. But you know me, Maya. You know the real me. Underneath all the fighting, we were good together." "We were never good together. I was just too broken to see it." Silence on the line. "You're making a mistake," Brad said finally.
His voice had changed. Harder now, the charm evaporating. I'm offering you a way out, a chance to keep your family together. If you don't take it, I'll have to pursue other options. What options? I know where you are, Maya. I know you're in a cabin in Marquette County. I know Lorraine's car is parked out front.
I know Genesis was playing in the yard an hour ago, wearing a purple dress.
Maya's heart stopped. I have people watching you, people who will do whatever I ask. So think very carefully about your next words. Maya looked back at the cabin. Genesis was inside now, probably having lunch. Safe. For the moment. What do you want me to do? Meet me. Tonight. Alone. There's a rest stop on Highway 28, mile marker 147. Be there at midnight. We'll talk like civilized people. And then you'll make your choice. And if I don't come? Then I'll come to you. And I won't be alone. And things will get very unpleasant for everyone involved. The line went dead. Maya stood there for a long moment, the phone pressed against her chest. Her mind was racing. Options, strategies, escape routes. She could run, take Genesis and Lorraine and disappear. But Brad would find them. He'd proven that already. She could call the FBI, tell them about the threat, but by the time they mobilized, Brad could be at the cabin. And he wasn't bluffing about having people. Or she could meet him, walk into the trap with her eyes open, and end this once and for all. Maya walked back to the cabin. Lorraine looked up from the stove. Who was on the phone? Brad. Lorraine's face hardened. What did he want? He wants me to meet him, tonight, alone. Absolutely not. Mama, he knows where we are. He has people watching us. If I don't go, he'll come here. Then we call the police, the FBI, someone. They won't get here in time. Maya sat down at the table. He's desperate, Mama. Desperate and angry and out of options. That makes him dangerous, but it also makes him stupid. Lorraine stared at her. What are you thinking? I'm thinking that Brad has underestimated me for 7 years. He thinks I'm scared. He thinks I'll do whatever he says to protect Genesis. And he's right about one thing. I will do anything to protect my daughter.
Maya's voice hardened. But I'm done running. I'm done hiding. If Brad wants a final confrontation, I'll give him one. On my terms. You're going to get yourself killed. No, Mama. I'm going to finish this. She spent the next 8 hours preparing. Patricia arranged for FBI agents to position themselves near the rest stop. They would stay back, invisible, until Maya gave the signal. If Brad tried anything, they'd move in. But Maya had another plan, a backup, something she hadn't told anyone. Because she knew Brad. She knew he would have anticipated the FBI. He would have contingencies, countermoves. She needed her own. At 11:30, Maya kissed Genesis goodbye. The little girl was asleep, clutching Mr. Whiskers, dreaming of butterflies. I love you, baby, Maya whispered. I'm going to make sure no one ever hurts you again. Lorraine walked her to the car. You don't have to do this. Yes, I do. Maya hugged her mother tight. If something happens to me, take care of her. Raise her to be strong. Tell her I loved her more than anything in this world. You're going to tell her yourself. Lorraine's voice cracked. You hear me? You're coming back. I'm coming back, Mama. I promise. She got in the car and drove into the darkness. The rest stop was deserted. A single light illuminated the empty parking lot. The kind of place where bad things happen to people who weren't careful. Maya parked and waited. At exactly midnight, a black SUV pulled in. Brad stepped out. He looked different, thinner, wilder. His eyes had a manic energy that Maya had never seen before.
This wasn't the polished CEO who had charmed investors and seduced models. This was a man at the end of his rope. "You came," he said. "I wasn't sure you would." "I came." Maya stepped out of her car but kept the door between them. "Now talk." Always so practical. Brad walked closer. "That's what I loved about you, Maya. You never wasted time on emotions. Pure logic. Pure survival. What do you want, Brad?" "I told you. I want my family back." "You don't have a family. You have a daughter you tried to disown and an ex-wife you tried to destroy." That was business. This is personal. He reached into his jacket. Maya tensed, but he only pulled out an envelope. "This is a ticket to Costa Rica. One way. There's a house waiting for us. Money in accounts nobody knows about. We could start over. Really start over this time." "And what? Pretend the last 7 years didn't happen?" "The last 7 years made us stronger." Brad stepped closer. "We're survivors, Maya. Both of us. Together, we're unstoppable." "You're delusional." "I'm realistic." His voice hardened. "The FBI is going to catch up with me eventually. I know that. But before they do, I want to spend time with my daughter. I want to remember what it felt like to have a family. You had a family. You threw it away. I made mistakes. Everyone makes mistakes. You committed crimes. You stole millions. You tried to gaslight me into a mental institution." Maya's voice rose. "You told your lawyer that no judge would give custody to a hysterical black woman. Those weren't mistakes, Brad. That was who you really are." Brad's face twisted. "I was venting. I was angry." "You were honest. For the first time in our entire marriage, you were actually honest." He stared at her. The charm had completely evaporated now. What remained was raw and ugly and dangerous. "You're not going to come with me, are you?" "No." "Even to protect Genesis?" "Especially to protect Genesis. I'm not raising my daughter in hiding with a fugitive father. I'm not teaching her that running from consequences is acceptable. And I'm not letting you use her as a bargaining chip anymore." Brad was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was eerily calm. "Then I guess we're done negotiating." He raised his hand. Two men emerged from the shadows. Maya's heart hammered, but she didn't move. "You think I came here alone?" "I think you brought the FBI," Brad smiled. "My people have been watching them for hours. They're positioned on Highway 28, half a mile away. By the time they realize something's wrong, we'll be gone." He gestured to the men. "Take her." They started toward Maya. "Brad, don't do this. You had your chance." "I'm not talking about my chance." Maya reached into her pocket. "I'm talking about yours." She pulled out her phone and pressed a button. For a moment, nothing happened. Then headlights blazed to life. Not from the highway, from the tree line behind the rest stop. 3 vehicles, moving fast. Brad spun around. "What the hell? You thought I'd trust the FBI to protect me?" Maya's voice was steady now. "I grew up in Detroit, Brad. I know people too." The vehicles screeched to a halt. Doors flew open. Men and women emerged, some in uniforms, some not. At the front was a woman Maya recognized. Denise Walker, her mother's friend from the neighborhood. Former Army. Current owner of a private security firm that specialized in protecting domestic violence survivors. "Bradley Whitmore." Denise's voice carried across the parking lot. "Step away from the woman." Brad's men looked at each other. They were outnumbered. Outgunned. "This isn't over," Brad snarled. "Yes, it is." Maya walked toward him. "You're surrounded. Your men aren't going to fight for you. And in about 30 seconds, the FBI is going to come screaming down that highway, wondering why there are suddenly 15 armed citizens at a rest stop." She stopped right in front of him. "You spent 7 years making me feel powerless. small, worthless. You made me doubt my own sanity. You made me afraid of my own shadow. And through all of it, I survived. I protected my daughter. I built a case against you. And I won. Brad's jaw tightened. This is your last chance, Brad.
Turn yourself in. Face the consequences of your actions. Be the father Genesis deserves, even if it's from a prison cell. Or run. Keep running forever. But know that I will never stop fighting for my daughter, and neither will the people who love me. She could see it in his eyes, the calculation, the desperation, the last flickering ember of the man he might have been.
I could have made you happy, he said quietly.
You could have. Maya felt something like sadness.
But you chose not to.
Sirens in the distance. The FBI had finally realized something was happening. Brad looked at the approaching lights, at the security team surrounding him, at Maya, standing before him without fear.
Tell Genesis I'm sorry.
Tell her yourself, from prison. Brad closed his eyes. For a moment, he looked almost peaceful. Then he raised his hands.
I surrender.
Denise's team moved in. Handcuffs clicked. Brad was led to one of the vehicles. As he passed Maya, he stopped.
She has your eyes, he said. Genesis. She's going to be just like you.
Maya looked at the man who had been her husband, her tormentor, the father of her child.
No, she said. She's going to be better.
The FBI arrived 3 minutes later, full of questions and confusion and bureaucratic frustration. But Maya didn't care about their paperwork or their protocols. She got in her car and drove back to the cabin. Genesis was still asleep when she arrived. Mr. Whiskers clutched to her chest. Purple dress laid out for tomorrow. Maya sat on the edge of the bed and watched her daughter breathe. Lorraine appeared in the doorway.
Is it over?
It's over.
He's in custody?
FBI has him. He surrendered. Lorraine let out a breath that sounded like it had been held for 7 years.
Thank God.
Maya reached out and gently brushed a curl from Genesis's forehead.
She's safe now, Mama. Finally safe. You did that.
Lorraine's voice was thick with emotion.
You protected her.
Through everything, you protected her. We protected her, together. Lorraine sat down beside Maya, mother and daughter, grandmother and mother. 3 generations of Washington women who had survived everything life had thrown at them.
What happens now? Lorraine asked.
Now we heal, Maya smiled. We go home. We rebuild. We teach Genesis that she can be anything she wants to be, and no man will ever make her feel less than she is.
And Trust Vault?
Maya had thought about this. The settlement gave her a significant stake in the company. The board had reached out, asking if she would consider a leadership role. I'm going to turn it into something good, Maya said. Something that helps people instead of exploiting them. Financial literacy programs for underserved communities. Security software that actually protects privacy. Brad built Trust Vault on lies. I'm going to rebuild it on truth. Genesis stirred in her sleep.
Mommy?
I'm here, baby. Go back to sleep.
Is Daddy coming home?
Maya felt her heart crack. No, baby. Daddy isn't coming home. But you have me, and Grandma, and we love you more than all the stars in the sky. Genesis smiled sleepily.
That's a lot of stars.
Yes, it is. The little girl drifted back to sleep. Maya and Lorraine sat in silence, watching her dream.
6 months later, Maya stood at the podium of Trust Vault's annual shareholder meeting. The room was packed. Press in the back row, investors in the front. The entire company watching via live stream. She was wearing a tailored navy suit, simple, professional. A far cry from the target dress she'd worn to her first court appearance. "Good morning," she began. "Most of you know my story. You've read the headlines. You've seen the court documents. You know that I was married to the founder of this company, and that our marriage ended in ways none of us could have anticipated." She paused. "What you might not know is that I helped build Trust Vault from the beginning. I wrote the original business plan. I invested the capital that saved this company from bankruptcy. And I did it all while raising a daughter and surviving a marriage that nearly destroyed me." The room was silent. "I'm not here to ask for your sympathy. I'm here to ask for your trust." Trust Vault was built on a foundation of deception, hidden assets, offshore accounts, products that violated user privacy. That ends today. She clicked to the next slide. "I'm announcing a complete restructuring of our company. New privacy protections, new transparency standards, new community investment programs. We're going to become the company we always claimed to be. A company that people can actually trust." Murmurs rippled through the audience. "I know some of you are skeptical. You're wondering if I have what it takes to run a tech company. You're wondering if I'm just Bradley Whitmore's ex-wife, trying to prove something." Maya smiled. "Let me be clear. I am not Bradley Whitmore's ex-wife. I am Maya Washington, daughter of Lorraine Washington, granddaughter of Eleanor Washington, who cleaned houses for 30 years so her family could have a better life. I am a mother, a survivor, and as of today, the CEO of Trust Vault." She looked directly into the camera. "To everyone who has ever been underestimated, to everyone who has been told they came from nothing, to every woman who has had to rebuild her life from the ashes of someone else's destruction, this is for you." The applause started slowly. Then it built. Then it became a standing ovation. Maya stood at the podium, letting it wash over her. In the front row, Lorraine was crying openly. Beside her, Genesis was wearing a purple dress, holding Mr. Whiskers, beaming up at her mother with absolute pride. This was not the life Maya had planned. It was not the future she had imagined when she fell in love with a charming man at a coffee shop in Detroit. It was better. Because this life she had built herself, from nothing, into everything. 2 years later, Bradley Whitmore was sentenced to 14 years in federal prison for wire fraud, money laundering, and obstruction of justice. He stood in the courtroom, thinner and grayer than Maya remembered, and listened as the judge pronounced his fate. Maya wasn't there. She was at Genesis's dance recital, watching her 7-year-old spin across the stage in a purple tutu. She found out about the sentencing from Patricia, who texted her a single message. 14 years. It's finally over. Maya put her phone away and focused on her daughter. Genesis spotted her in the audience and waved wildly, breaking character completely. The other parents laughed. The dance teacher sighed, and Maya waved back, her heart full to bursting. After the recital, they went out for ice cream. Genesis got chocolate with rainbow sprinkles. Maya got vanilla. Lorraine got butter pecan, her usual. "Mommy," Genesis said, a smear of chocolate on her chin, "Mrs. Patterson asked us to draw our families today." "Oh? What did you draw?" Genesis pulled a crumpled piece of paper from her backpack. 3 figures. A tall woman with dark skin and natural hair. A shorter woman with gray hair and glasses. And a little girl in purple. "That's you," Genesis pointed. "And Grandma. And me." Maya studied the picture. "It's beautiful, baby. You're getting really good at drawing." "Mrs. Patterson said most kids draw mommies and daddies, but I told her my family is different. My family has a mommy and a grandma, and that's better because we have twice as much love."
Lorraine made a sound that was half laugh, half sob. Maya pulled her daughter into a hug. "That's exactly right, baby. Twice as much love." That night, after Genesis was asleep, Maya sat on the porch of her new house, the house she had bought with her own money, in the neighborhood where she had grown up, down the street from where Lorraine still lived. The stars were out, thousands of them, more than enough to cover all the love she felt for her daughter. She thought about the woman she had been 7 years ago, young, hopeful, naive, desperate to be loved by a man who didn't know what love was. She thought about the woman she had become, scarred but standing, broken but rebuilt, powerful in ways she never could have imagined. And she thought about Genesis, growing up surrounded by strong women, learning that her worth didn't depend on anyone else's validation, understanding that she came from generations of survivors who had faced worse and emerged stronger. Maya made a promise that night. She promised herself that she would never again let anyone make her feel small, that she would raise her daughter to know her own value, that she would spend the rest of her life proving that where you come from doesn't determine where you can go. And she promised that if she ever met another woman standing alone in a courtroom, terrified and outmatched, and convinced that she had no way out, she would reach out her hand and say the words she wished someone had said to her. "You are not alone. You are not worthless. And you are so much stronger than you know." Because Maya Washington had been that woman once, and now she was something else entirely. A mother, a leader, a survivor. And nobody would ever call her nothing again.